Hey guys, Turk here, hope you're having a good one. I just got finished watching the AMD Zen 4 announcement video and there's a lot to talk about there, but in case you missed it and you're short on time, we're going to be covering it in just under 10 minutes. Get your timer ready, let's do this. Starting at the top of the presentation, AMD's Lisa Su came out and listed the expectations when it comes to the performance improvements with Zen 4, stating that they were shooting for a 10% IPC performance improvement. And throughout the development as well as the validation stage, they can confirm that they were able to get 13% improvement in their IPC claims. So AMD, tip of the cap to y'all. Along with the IPC gains, the Zen 4 architecture is able to boost up to 800 MHz faster than the previous Zen 3 designs, finally breaking the 5 GHz barrier across the product stack. Combining all of those performance improvements into a single-threaded performance, they're claiming they're able to achieve 29% performance improvement compared to the 5000 series Ryzen chips. With the great architecture under the hood, let's talk about their flagship, the 7950X. The Ryzen 9 7950X shares the same core and thread count as the predecessor, the 5950X, but as we said earlier, it achieves a massive boost clock speed up to 5.7 GHz. Along with that, we're getting double the L2 space, which is critical when it comes to the instruction sets, but it usually gets overshadowed to the impressive L3 specs. However, the flagship is also getting a sizable bump in its TDP. It's going from 105 watts all the way up to 170 watts. So those are some pretty impressive specs, right? Well, it's got performance to boot. AMD claims to get a 15% performance improvement at 1080p for a list of popular games. Dota 2 gets 32% improvement, Shadow of the Tomb Raider gets 35%, but Borderlands 3 and CSGO, they're a little less impressive with 6% and 13% respectively. But for all you creators out there, you should be expecting about a 40% improvement compared to the 5950X in your creation workloads. When AMD stacks it up against the competition with the 12900K, man, things do get a little bit less optimistic. Dota 2 sees 23% performance improvement, Shadow of the Tomb Raider 14%, but Borderlands 3 and CSGO, they're practically indistinguishable from Team Blue. But one thing I found misleading in the presentation was they were claiming you should see up to 62% performance improvement compared to Intel's top dog when looking at multi-threaded performance. But when you actually look at the charts and the figures they show on the screen, you should be expecting anywhere in the 40% range, which is still pretty good. Now we're 7 minutes into the presentation and we finally get our first look at the full product stack from the Ryzen 7000 series. For you bargain builders out there, the 6-core offering with the 7600X is going to clock at 5.3 GHz and it's going to consume a TDP of 105 watts. The 8-core variant is coming in the 7700X flavor, boosting up to 5.4 GHz, again rocking 105 watts of TDP. 12 cores is being represented by the 7900X, and it's going to get 5.6 GHz, 100 MHz less than the flagship, but it's also touting the same TDP. AMD finally has 5 GHz processors up their sleeve, so how does their budget offering with the 7600X compare against the 12900K from Intel? On average, the 7600X should perform about 5% faster than the 12900K. Lord of the Rings Shadow of War gets about 2% improvement, F1 2020 tops the charts with 11%. Unfortunately though, the 7600X loses by about 3 percentage points in Grand Theft Auto 5, which is right about 183 FPS, and with Cyberpunk, we are effectively neck and neck. But for all you esports players out there, Rainbow Six Siege sees up to 17% performance improvement in an esports title at 1080p. So that's a pretty good combination for not that much cash. Overall, the Zen product lineup across the ages has made some very good iterative improvements. Now, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of Zen 4 and how it ticks, but if you're interested, I've got a link down below for the presentation itself, and you can go down to timecode 923 in that video to see what the CTO Papermaster has to say about Zen 4. So now let's talk about the platform that's going to house your beast with the AM5 socket. With the transition to the new AM5 socket, AMD is transitioning away from their PGA designs of old to the more modern LGA sockets, which are going to have the pins on the motherboard as opposed to having the pins on the processor like the previous Ryzen processors. Along with the pin adjustments, the AM5 socket now supports 230 watts of power delivery, which is super spicy. With this new platform, DDR5 and PCI Gen 5 are supported on day one, so future generations of hardware should be plug and play. But one thing I like more than Intel's latest motherboard revisions is AMD is maintaining their cooler compatibility. So if you have an AM4 cooler, it should be plug and play with your new AM5 socket. But keep in mind, your processors will consume more power, so make sure your heatsink is up to the challenge. Now to the nitty gritty. There's going to be two different series of chipsets. There's the X670 and then there's the B650. The X670 will launch along with the Ryzen processors in September, where the more budget-friendly B650 boards will be coming in October. Along with that, there's now two variants to each of those different motherboards. There is the standard version and there's the extreme version. The standard version only provides PCI Gen 5 to the storage devices, whereas the extreme version provides Gen 5 PCI to both the storage as well as your GPU solution. Alright, let's talk about memory. Rather than supporting the previous generation with DDR4 as well as DDR5, AMD is going full bore into the future in supporting DDR5. Along with that though, AMD is introducing their AMD EXPO timings. EXPO stands for Extended Profiles for Overclocking, which is actually very similar to XMP. It's a one-click overclocking solution where once you enable it in the BIOS, it's going to be pulling in all of the timings that are certified by the vendor to match the specifications from AMD, which should get you about 11% faster gaming performance as well as reduced timings on the chipset. They were claiming right around 63 nanoseconds. And with several kits that are going to be available on launch day, they are claiming you should be able to get kits up to 6,400 megatransfers per second, which is very spicy and is a good thing to see. With all of this next generation connectivity, we should be expecting prices, but AMD did claim that they will have $125 motherboards available at launch, but I would expect pricing to be anywhere in the $175 to $250 price range, which is actually pretty decent in this current market. And if you were worried that AMD's not going to be supporting this platform for too long, they did confirm that they plan to support it beyond 2025. And given that AM4 lasted for around 6 years, I don't see why AM5 can't go the distance. So now that we know more about the cores and the platforms, Lisa comes and takes it home. We should expect 11% faster single-threaded performance with our newer processors, and we should also get 44% faster multi-threaded performance. And if you were worried about performance per watt compared to an Intel-based platform, going with a Ryzen 7000 series processor should net you about a 47% more performance per watt. With all that said, these processors are shipping out on September 27th, which is less than a month away. Of course, with these latest and greatest processors, there's a price premium attached. The 7950X is coming in right at $700, which is about $150 USD more expensive than the 5950X. The 7900X is coming in at $550, which is $140 more expensive than the 5900X. The 7700X is coming in right at $400, which of course is $150 more expensive than the 5700X. And for you budget builders out there, the 7600X does come in at $300, but of course, that's $100 more expensive than the 5600X. And just like in a Marvel movie, you've got to stick to the credit scene. And of course, Lisa Su came out and showed us our first sneak peek at actual gameplay with RDNA 3 graphics cards. Now, if y'all were curious what kind of performance you should expect from those types of GPUs, hit the link up at the top right where I talk about the 50% performance per watt claims that they've made in previous videos. But for now, we've got our eyes peeled on the gameplay of Lies of P. They were playing it at 4K at 60 FPS at the highest settings possible, and for a pre-release game on pre-release hardware, I've got to say it's pretty awesome to see that coming up so soon after Gamescom. And that's all Lisa Su had to say about the Ryzen 7000 series product announcement. Of course, I've got my own thoughts about it, and I'm a little bummed about what I saw, primarily about the TDP of the processors, the upcoming platform costs for a brand new build, as well as the pricing for the processors themselves. But those thoughts will have to wait for another video, so if we get enough thumbs up in this video, I'll do that pretty quick. But other than that, I appreciate y'all sticking to the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later, guys.